Having said that, I would like to start.
In the status quo, we have many unfortunate events in society in regards to online game addiction, Mr. Speaker. We believe that there are many unfortunate events, like parents actually leaving their babies to take care of themselves at home, like teenagers actually starving and dehydrating themselves, leading to a heart attack. We see many unfortunate events in which the government has no regulation upon. And we believe that it's now time for the government to make a mechanism in dealing with such programs, with such individuals, with dealing with such public harms, and taking care of people that are addicted to games, like our own Whip, who was addicted to Princess Diaries when she was 10 years old. We believe that the government needs to have a mechanism to deal with the addicts of online gaming and alternate society sites. So I, as the Prime Minister, will give you the definition and move on to argument. So, about the definition, we define stamina as your physical capability of engaging in a certain activity. So the stamina system would be setting a daily quota of X hours. And once this X hour is reached, we believe that the site will be automatically you'll be automatically denied access to the site for a period of 24 hours in which you can take a drink, you can feed yourself, you can go to the restroom, and so forth. We're not going to set X hours because we believe we don't want this debate to be a technicality debate. What about 6 hours? What about 8 hours? Because we want to really focus on what we're trying to do. Can a government regulate a corporation or an industry because it damages the entire society and has a public harm? We believe absolutely. When an industry is harming the public, we believe that the government needs to step in. Now about online gaming, it's quite clear. And about alternate societies, it's an internet sites or programs that is a replica of the reality, such as making your own cyber baby or cyber families, or having a fancy house or Princess Diaries and so forth. We're specifically excluding social networking sites because we feel that's outside the scope of today's debate, and thank you, Suda, for accepting our definition. So Prime Minister, first I'll talk about the seriousness of addiction, why people get addicted to online gaming in the first place, and the problems that go with it. Secondly, about this confusion of reality and cyberspace, which is quite detrimental to the public. And our second, and I'll also move on into our third argument, which is about physical harms. And our second speaker will deal with why the government's role in dealing with industries that harm the public. First, about addiction. So why are individuals of Korea actually addicted to online games and these sites? Because of various reasons. First, it's quite physically not difficult. All you need to do is sit down and have wrist abilities to click on a mouse or keyboards. Therefore, you are able to do it physically for a long period of time if your wrist allows you to do so. Furthermore, it's very easy to access online games in Korea. It's also very cheap, which is why the most vulnerable, why the most uneducated, and why the most young people without not enough money and with easy access get addicted to online gaming and these sites. Furthermore, there's an endless supply of fun. Because there's endless communication, because there's endless levels that you want to reach in online games, we believe this is what leads to addiction. Yes, sir.
Well, don't you concede the fact that online gaming may be expensive, especially in the status quo, or especially to children?
Online, but maybe you pay a lot of money to buy your old cash on Maple Story or something. It's cheap is that PC ROMs or PC rooms cost only 1,000 won on a comparative average per hour. We think access to these games is quite cheap because you don't necessarily have to buy the software. It's downloadable on the internet, hence online games. So that's why we think it's very cheap commodity or cheap recreation that the vulnerable public can have access to. But anyways, so because of all these reasons, these people get addicted. Now what's wrong? Addiction is harmful in that when an individual reaches a mental status of being addicted to something, they forget to take care of themselves. They forget to feed themselves. They forget to drink water and so forth. And that is why there's health risks, which I'll go on right now. There's a mental health risk, Mr. Speaker, because there's a reality confusion. Because these online sites and because these gaming sites are so realistic, because it seems like you shot 10,000 goblins and you're the tyrants of the world, because you can grow many beautiful babies and build houses on the internet, there's a confusion of reality. Do I really own a mansion with nice clothes, or am I just a poor Korea University student with not so fancy clothes? There's a reality confusion here. And why is that so bad? We'll explain through examples. Example number one, in the case of Korea, what happened a couple weeks ago, quite unfortunate, was Both parents, the mother and the father, were addicted to this social site where you create babies and families, like this alternative society site. What really happened was, instead of taking care of their baby at home, their real, live, breathing baby, what they did was they focused on feeding their fancy baby online, and the baby actually died. And also unfortunate events due to addiction. We have kids confusing the reality. They think shooting gives them exhilaration, excitement through online games. And what they do is, I think it'll be cool if I can stab someone and taste real blood because it gave me so much excitement. And that's what happens. That's why so many teenagers, we've seen so many teenage cases where they actually go out into society and commit those murders and atrocious events because they simply are too vulnerable to distinguish what online games can provide you and what reality provides you. And that is what's quite harmful. But thirdly, and most importantly, not most, but quite importantly, about these physical harms. Now, I'm pretty sure all of you are very intelligent and have never done this to yourself before, but when you're staring at a screen, only using your wrist movement to activate your goblin to become a warrior, I think that's what you try to do, what happens is your heart stops. Because you're dehydrated, because you're eating ramen which is full of sodium, because you're not taking care of yourself, and heart attack appears, and there's physical damages, such as, we're not just talking about obese people who are addicted, or we're not talking about obesity, although that's also very harmful, but we're talking about actual death here. We're talking about how an addiction to a cyberspace can actually lead to your own death. And when we believe an industry causes this vulnerability, when an industry causes this addiction and this death and these unfortunate events, we believe it is the government's role to step in and take care of this problem. So all in all, Madam and Mr. Speakers, what we're trying to do here today is we're trying to tell you that the government has a role in stepping and solving a problem that is detrimental to our society. We're trying to help out the vulnerable population that is being affected by online gaming and alternate society sites. We believe it is the role of the government to be responsible towards the people, especially when we're talking about the most vulnerable, the young children, the young teenagers, also incapable adults who think going online for 48 hours is quite exciting. What we're trying to do is a simple mechanism, setting a daily quota of X hours that once you reach it, you have to have a 24-hour rest period. It's quite suitable. It's an easy mechanism that has greater benefits that South can reach. So for those very reasons, we're very proud to propose this motion.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your speech. Now I'd like to invite the Leader of the Opposition to start the opposition case.
So, ladies and gentlemen, today the government has presented us the reality, and we concede to many of their points, but they have conveniently left out a lot about the reality of online gaming, and it is time for us to face this inconvenient truth. So, the inconvenient truth about gaming, ladies and gentlemen, is that it is an addiction, and addicts will do anything whatsoever to continue getting that sort of benefit from where they are addicted. So, Korean online games allow multiple IDs, and also there is an illegal cash trade market for online games. So, the government has to prove that their policy will somehow eradicate this problem, because under their policy, online gamers can simply just, use multiple IDs or even go on multiple games. You don't have to play game A for 24 hours. You can play game A, B, C, D, etc. So, the government's policy is not adequately supported. So, now, with that being said, the opposition will now go on to our constructive case. So, basically, in the problem of the status quo, we want to eradicate this problem as well. But we believe that the stamina system is incomplete and it is too inadequate to deal with the situation correctly. So, our alternate model is to offer counseling to these users who have reported voluntarily or by the consent of the family or friends. and in the real world instead of in the online gaming world. Because their problems happen here in the real world, ladies and gentlemen, not on the online world. So is that really the only thing the government can do? Should the government just stop there and just avoid everything else? So we have 4 points today to support this view. Now, the first point is about that it's too much of an infringement upon the freedom of action. Second, the government's idea will bring grave economic consequences here in the Republic of Korea. Third, it will actually worsen the black market problem. And fourth, it will not be effective in curing addictions. So, I will discuss the first 2 points, and the Deputy Prime Minister will discuss the remaining 2 points. So, now, going on to my substantive points. First point, it's too much of an infringement upon the freedom of action because, no thank you, according to the Supreme Court of the Republic of Korea, the Articles 12 through 14 of the Constitution of the Republic stipulate a freedom of action. So, we have a freedom of action. No thank you. You're free to drink. You're free to smoke. You're free as long as you do not harm anybody else. This is called prima non nocere, which is Latin for first of all, do not harm. So, this is a core principle of all legal systems in known countries. And ladies and gentlemen, we have this very basic freedom of action. Now, so what is the case at hand here? We have addicts, we have alcoholic addicts, we have smoking addicts, we have cigarette addicts, and we have game addicts. And is there a reason to discriminate between these 2 groups? Basically, the government is only going to discriminate against online gaming users, and they're only going to forbid the use of online gaming, whereas they're just simply going to let alcohol users consume whatever amount of alcohol you do, and Koreans do indeed drink a lot of alcohol. And moreover, cigarettes, it's the same thing. They're not going to place a limit on cigarettes. Yes?
Under your plan, aren't you thinking only about the aftermath, treating people that are already addicts, whereas we're preventing addicts from actually happening in the first place?
That will be discussed later on in our points. So, now, ladies and gentlemen, basically, this is an issue of discrimination, and the Korean Constitutional Court has a model of deciding what, in order for a freedom to be limited, you have to meet 4 conditions. No. So, basically, the 4 conditions are this. 1, there has to be a justifiable object to this. But is there a justifiable object to discriminating only online gaming users? I do not think so. 2, adequate measures. Is this really an adequate measure? This is only a very basic, simple, naive approach to the problem that cannot adequately deal with the situation. 3rd, there has to be minimal infringement upon the freedom. But this is a fundamental infringement upon the core of the freedom, because the freedom of action is basically about your being free to do whatever you want, as long as it does not harm others. Yes?
How can you say it's not harming others when people are killing other people because they can't defer their reality and
Okay, I think you're talking about the baby case, and that, of course, in that case, we have to analyze the situation a little differently. But basically, the situation for most online gamers is that they do not harm anybody. So, in this case, should we just, just group them up into this, and then just subject them to this sort of great group discrimination? I do not think so. So, and the fourth model is basically a balance of legal objectives. You have to achieve a balance between the 2 legal objectives that are here. In this case, the freedom of action and also social justice. But ladies and gentlemen, in this case, there isn't a balance because freedom of action is being completely ignored by the government. No. So, now, moving on to my second point. The second point is about the grave economic consequences the government's plan will bring. Now, basically, the game industry in the Republic of Korea constitutes a large portion of the economy. No. So, now, in this game industry, most companies are online gaming companies, and their profit model is by using long gameplay and many users so that the users will acquire game money to buy game swords or game, basically all these things in the game. But But if we implement their plan, basically there's only going to be a limited time. That's not going to be enough to fulfill much in this online gaming world. So users will lose interest, and they will have two options. Basically, turning to the black market to get cash items that you could get for real cash, or they'll leave the game entirely because online gaming needs a lot of time into that, and if you just limit it, basically you can't achieve anything in this world. So they'll just lose interest and leave. And so, in either way, if they turn to the black market or if they leave, the company cannot make money because they're not selling it to users, and users are leaving anyway. So, under their current profit model, companies cannot make any profit. And so, that leads to less users. And ultimately, they mentioned the idea of PC rooms, and that they conceded that PC rooms are mostly supported by game users, and game users will not go to PC rooms as well. And PC rooms are also a strong part of the Korean economy, and this will adversely affect the Korean economy as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, in all these aspects, the government's plan cannot simply work, and it only brings all these harms to our society. So, should this decision stand? I do not think so, and that is why we're proud to oppose.
35 seconds. Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. Now I'd like to invite the Deputy Prime Minister to conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, by the end of the Leader of Opposition debate, the first response that we had was that we won this debate by the first initial argument. So I'm going to explain you what I'm going to explain, because that's fundamentally, I'm going to rebut to their side of the case, and then move on to defense of our arguments, and move on to my defensive argument, the role of government. First of all, looking at their rebuttals. First of all, their constructive models. They say they want to rehabilitate people. There's two fundamental flaws within this debate. Number one, they say they won't only treat people after math. There's no absolute mechanism for them to prevent people from getting into new markets and new addiction, ladies and gentlemen. And also at the same time, it goes contradicting their own points, because he said it's a freedom of action, is that you don't harm others. If it's freedom of action is so important, why are you guys trying to help its people? Because they know that freedom of action to individual itself is somewhat harmful. They concede to that fact, and that's a contradiction. And also, second point of rebuttal, they say multiple number of IDs. Most fundamentally, the concept of addiction, ladies and gentlemen, isn't about having multiple games, A, B, and C, and D. It's like you get obsessed to a single game, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about games that are particularly addictive, like Lineage, like World of Warcraft, which most of the majority of man has got addicted to it at least once. Sit down. We believe that fundamentally addiction to fun. The concept of fun only applies when you actually play one game with that. So don't talk about multiple IDs. That's out of this debate at all. Third point about their freedom of action. No, thank you, sir. They say as long as you don't harm others, that you have inherent right to do whatever you want. Then please prove it to us how something similar like suicide, that it doesn't necessarily harm others, should be illegalized in the first place. Second, we do have it harms others. We told you clear examples, the babies die, and the innocent women will be killed and stabbed by a middle school kid. Their response was saying, extreme. Then what are we talking about in today's day? Then why are the proposition side fundamentally trying to prevent? They're trying to narrow down this case, somehow make it, all of our evidence extreme. Because that's the reality, that's what you should focus on, rather than on their side of the house. Fourth, they said the concept of economy, how Koreans PC will lose out and people will go out of business. That's a ridiculous argument for them to ever to talk about, because the governments need to act upon the moral boundaries when the companies have businesses. We shouldn't let companies arbitrarily or randomly ramble around places and have profits out of it.
Sir.
I will take Shingo.
So you're basically saying, thank you. So you're basically say that the government has the right to do whatever it wants with the companies if it has a moral basis?
We believe that particularly if the social harms exist in status quo where governments can need to protect their needs. If government does not have a social status quo or dire need, we might be debating about this motion in the first place. Please, in units that they themselves have admitted the fact that addiction is a problem. So you consider the fact that there is a problem, so what are you going to do about it? Now, extending our side of the case about addictions. Their entire rebuttal was based on saying that children will do multiple IDs, but I already gave a response to that. Let me give a further extension of the case. If you see the video disturbing display terminal syndrome, the children are easily, especially although even adults get easily addicted to the online games and social alternate sites. Therefore, there is physical losses of pain gives a certain status quo. Their idea of rehabilitation does not work. Fundamentally, it's easy and cheaply accessible to these people. And second, we told you clearly in our Hilda speech wonderfully how it targets specific minor groups. People who are relatively poor, people who are relatively uneducated because they're unaware of the harm of status quo. They say they're going to rehab people, but I doubt how they're going to rehab people who don't get the harm at the first place in general. Second, about how it leads to failed substep reality. When people get obsessed with the concept of real world and virtual world, they are confused. If you're a Rain, or if you're, whatever you call it, a celebrity in that side world, or not side, in that social world or sites that you talk about, it's different from your reality. It's your reality is different. We think that, no thank you sir, the individuals have failed to neglect or negotiate or differentiate the concept of reality and virtual world, so harms increase at status quo. So move on to my side of the arguments. First of all, I'm going to talk about the role of government and explaining the more of the status quo. In the status quo, internet is a concept of free from control, ladies and gentlemen. At the same time, even though it's free from control, there's absolute harms the internet provides society. The government has failed to do any actions in trying to tackle this problem. It goes in line with Korea's recent legislation to restrict online usage for children at the current status quo from 12 a.m. to 8 p.m. Similar policy in the context, the government is trying to take control over a market or over an individual industry that's been excessively providing social harms, as we already exemplified before. And second is that Korea's government. Let's talk about the topic is Korea. Korea is the best internet interconnected in the world, ladies and gentlemen. But despite the best interconnected, it lacks capable measures to tackle social harms that we already identified in today's debate. By having this policy instrument, the goal of the government is to fundamentally be upon preventing an individual from vulnerable, dangerous instruments. It should regulate on neglected corporations that make excessively addictions and allow children and poor people to access. We fundamentally believe that this side of the house, well, it's hard. We fundamentally believe that this side of the house promotes to cover all of government to be more active in regards to social harm. With their side of the arguments non-existent in the first place, doesn't really happen. No thank you, sir. The concept of government should be firm with regards to actively engaging in social harm. We believe there's a clear benefit for our side of the house in saying so. Now, fundamentally, the importance of today's debate should be rendered upon the concept of addiction, whether online game is addictive or not. They are conceded that it is addictive. So, we have to consider two things, Mr. Speaker. A, how do we prevent people from getting addicted? How do we get vulnerable groups from getting addicted? B, what to do with vulnerable people who are already addicted? Our side of the house tackles both of the problems because we gave you clear reasons how the people will not be able to access. Therefore, they have no other option but to choose other options. There is side of the house saying that we have to do rehabilitation, which already gave you enough example why it doesn't work. Because it gives you enough time, they give a chance for people to still access regardless of their rehabilitation of that internet games, ladies and gentlemen. It's fundamentally two differences. And the concept of which we focus upon, whether the government has legitimacy over to take or control the government sector or industrial sector that provides harm. Our side of the house says yes to that answer, and I've been waiting 5 years for this grand finals, and I'm going to take check with it.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. And now I'd like to invite the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Now, before I move on to my speech, I would like to warn you that I am not a game addict. Whatever I say is because, well, people informed me. It's not based on personal experience. Now, moving on directly onto the rebuttals and then on the constructive case of the opposition side. Now, before I move on to the constructive case, I would like to provide today's rebuttals. I've classified my rebuttals into 3 categories. First is to clarify and ask for clarification. And number 2, I'll talk about the contradiction the government side has made. And then number 3, move on to the wrong analysis the government has continuously made. So number 1, clarification. Well, Mr. Speaker, it seems that the government side does not clearly understand the opposition's model. We are basically providing counseling. Counseling, which is basically having hospital hours. You visit the hospital, talk with the doctor, which you think is a problem, and then you have mental counseling. It's practically what we do with drug addicts. It's practically what we do with alcohol addicts in the status quo already. So I don't really think it's that difficult anymore. Now, moving on to the question, a point that they need to clarify. So they have to clarify how their model will solve the problem. Basically, because they just said that, well, we're going to limit the time to play online games, and then suddenly, magically, all the problems they have proposed will disappear. What is the link? No, thank you. And please speak up a little bit. I'm sorry. Anyways, and then, now, moving on to the contradiction that they made. Well, they talked about suicide, and Mr. Speaker, well, let's take a look at the scope of the policy that they're trying to implement. They're trying to implement a policy that will influence practically all the users of online games. Now, the question is, how many people commit suicide or kill because of online games? It is an extreme minority of people, so you're basically implementing a majority influence policy for a minority. We say that our model tackles these minority, or even the people, if they are a majority, who need the counseling. The counseling is quite simple. It is either requested by the parents because they're talking about the children. Usually the parents get concerned, so they ask for counseling. Or by the individual himself or herself, or the people around them. Then we will provide them with mental counseling. That is basically what we're going to tell you. No, thank you, ma'am. And they also talked about the social harm. And if there's social harm, the government can stop it. Well, Mr. Speaker, then why is the government practically not stopping everything on the internet, especially regarding the pornographic sites, etc., when there is an existing social harm? Well, thank you, sir. It's because you have to weigh the harm and benefits. The benefits of stopping it and the harm or the infringement of rights that it brings. Just simply having a harm doesn't mean that you can limit it. And yes,
isn't government already providing regulation on pornography sites, something that's socially harmful in that current status quo?
How is it that I can watch that practically whenever I want? Personal experiences with the people telling us. Now, moving on to the wrong analysis the government has made. Well, the government practically said that, well, reality confusion will be stopped if you do not play the game. Well, Mr. Speaker, we tell you, people daydream about the games. People plan what they will do in their precious time. If you only have 2 hours of gameplay time, well, you plan for the previous 6 to make sure that you use the time effectively. You'll talk with your friends, you'll talk online, you go to individual, fan club sites and do etc. and do research about the internet game. It doesn't mean that, well, not being able to access the game itself doesn't mean that you'll not play the game and you'll not have a reality confusion. It doesn't mean that you'll go outside and talk with your friends, and no thank you, ma'am. Also, well, they said that we have to preempt the addiction. Well, Mr. Speaker, does that mean that the government has the duty or even the legal possibility to preempt everything that has the potential of being addictive? Does that mean that we can prevent cigarettes, drugs, or even debate? It's quite addictive as well. That's not possible. We say, well, we can cure the addiction, no thank you, but it doesn't mean that we can prevent people from doing it just because there is a potential addiction. Now, moving on to the opposition's case today, I have 2 additional arguments. The first is that it'll increase cash trading black market. Now, number 1, currently the Korean government, what is it doing? It is on a war against the cash trading system, or the cash trading sites. Basically, the legal foundation is because cash trading is illegal. Mr. Speaker, it is directly stated in the license that you check Hugging or whatever you want when you log into the computer game. It says that all property belongs to the company. So cash trading in its foundation is basically selling or trading something you don't even own, which is illegal under the current status quo, especially in Korea. So why does cash trading increase, and then why is that bad? Well, basically, people will only have a limited time to play games. Well, just like in the real world, in the online game, no thank you sir, I'm talking about games. Anyways, well, you have to earn money in order to be able to spend it. To earn money, you have 2 options. You can either pay cash, or you can use you can spend your time killing goblins, mining, and then doing those productive things so that you can earn your money. No, thank you. And anyways, so, however, the thing is, people earn what they want, the zeal, if you want, in playing games when they actually want, when they spend, get good items, or get a brilliant sword, and everyone says, wow, that's cool. And before I move on to details, yes?
So how does rehabilitation somehow prevent this damaging cash trading problem that you raised?
Well, basically, it's that we're saying that your model does not prevent this, and your model is practically irrelevant to solving the status quo or the problem existing. Well, we say that we have identified the problem, which is the minority of people that you can see committing suicide will be solved within the status quo, and we say there are more harms in your model. That's what I've been talking about. So, basically, people will, since they cannot invest more time, they'll have to use their cash. As the demand of these items in the cash market will increase, well, the equilibrium price or equilibrium quantity traded within that market will increase, meaning that there will be an increase in cash trade. So why is this bad? Well, first of all, it is an incentive for people to do something that is illegal, trading something that you do not own. Number two, it is also bad for the company itself. Our brilliant Prime Minister told you the business model of the gaming industry. It's more time, more players. If people see a lot of cash trading, well, they will feel adverse discrimination, or they'll feel deprived because, well, someone like the son of Igoni has a cool ass score because, well, he has, I don't know, a lot of money, and I can't get that score because I only have limited time, not enough cash. So why should I play the game in the first place when I can't even catch him up? The reason why you play games is because you can achieve something you can't. That is why the minority, the poor people, play games, because they can be rich in there. But now you can't even be rich in games. Why would they play it in the first place? Less users, less income, bad for the company. Not only bad for the company, but also bad for the society as well. So now moving on to our last argument, which says that their model or the policy or whatever the motion today is not going to be effective. Now, Mr. Speaker, the problem is heavily addicted players that'll do everything to continue playing this game. Today in the status quo, what is the logging on system in online games? Basically, you have to sign in with the 주민등록번호 social security code, and then you create an ID, and then you log in. So everything is based on a social security code. What we can do is you can acquire multiple social security codes, something that we all know is practically possible, and we all know that we have a few. Anyways, in the status quo. So they can create multiple IDs by one, creating multiple characters with one account, or number two, creating multiple accounts in the first place with different social security numbers. So, let's take a look at the example of the famous Korean game Dungeon and Fighter. Don't know why I know that, but anyways, that has the stamina system in the status quo. Well, in that game, many people, practically everyone, have second, third, and fourth characters, so it has nothing to do with decreasing the time you play online games. We are proud to oppose.
All right, thank you, Deputy Leader of the Opposition. Now I'd like to invite the Government Whip Speaker.
Dear panel of judges, I usually really get excited on these kind of debates, and my teammates will calm down. Although I have a lot of rebuttals to make, I'll try to calm down. Now, before I go on, the problem of the opposition here is today, there are no development on rebuttals. Now, they're continually saying the same thing over and over again in the first and second speaker, and we believe that is no engagement in our case today. Now, having said this, let's look over the clashes of today's debate. Number one, which case is better? Is the policy of the government better, or is the policy of the opposition, which we believe is extremely weak? Which one is better? Number two, when is government intervention allowed? And on these two clashes, I would like to organize. Now, let's look at the situation here. The opposition consented to our problem where internet addiction exists. But somehow, their really weak policy doesn't solve it in any way. So we don't believe, as the opposition, how you're dealing with our case. Actually, just deny the existence of the problem, or give us a better alternative that solves the problem in the first place. Now, we'll show you why it's given the status quo, how is it an alternative case? And number two, if your alternative case really works, which is the status quo, why do we still have problems right now? And why are we still debating about this system in this debate? Yes, sir.
As the DPM has mentioned, the standard system is also in the status quo. So is it solving the problem? No.
Sir, if that system was in the status quo, we wouldn't be having this debate today. And that I think the panel of the CA is smart enough to have him pick a motion. Now, on the second reason why this alternative case is weak is that they agree to consent, and the person addicted must go voluntarily. Now, the problem of voluntarily is, number one, they don't go because they don't admit it, and they don't admit it because they don't know they're addicted. That is the most crucial problem of addictiveness, that they simply don't know, and they go on and on. And I believe that is why their case is weak. Now, they have rebutted, number one, that because if you can make multiple IDs, you can always start over again, and you can do the game over. Now, we have rebutted that case from that argument from the beginning, that it's addiction on a certain substance, on a certain game that is problem. That is why it leads to addiction. And if you just simply start over on a new ID, it's not the new game. But even in a new game, if you have another ID, you have to start all over from level 1. And the point of addiction is, the advancement in levels is the crucial point. These addicted people are focused on games 24 hours or even more because they want to advance to the next level. If they make a new ID, start from level 1 again, why in the world would they play this game, this boring game that they all know the techniques of? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The unfortunate truth is that in the Korean society, online games have very, very fast leveling up methods to a certain level, so you're not having a problem with that.
Well, that's an assumption that most of the Korean games are fast advancement, and I just believe that is not worth dealing with. Now, going on to the second clash, which is government intervention. Now, they have said that sometimes, we have proven to you that sometimes governments need to intervene when there are social harms necessary to deal with. We believe that we have dealt with you why online game addiction is a social harm. Number one, it is harmful to the individual. It's unhealthy for the individual, and it actually leads to them committing crimes and being psychologically weird. Now, on to the second level, why is it harmful to others? We believe that it's harmful to others because if you're killing random people on the street and innocent people, how can that not be harmful to others? Another part is, we talked to you about the health issue, about children, about adolescents. Now, who takes care of these health bills? Does the mom just stand by? No, they have to pay the bill for them. And we believe that this is also a detrimental effect on others. Another thing, psychologically demented. Now, if your child or friend or husband is psychologically demented due to these online game addictions, would you be happy? We believe that this is also a harm on the society in the end. Now, on the other part is that there's going to be so much economic consequences that we cannot deal with it. Now, are you prioritizing money over the people's lives, over the people's health, and over crimes that are killing random people? We believe that this is absolutely ridiculous as the government to value money over human lives. And now, on this sense, I'll explain to you where certain restrictions are put on firms because of social harms. Now, let's look at smoking and drinking. For economic benefits, we should open it up to adolescents and children. For the freedom of choice, we should open it up to the children, because the children also have the freedom to smoke. They also have the freedom to drink. But because the reason why we restrict this is because we believe that they are socially harmful to children, and that is why we restrict them to certain firms on detrimental things such as drugs or drinking or smoking. Now, another point that they have made is, why then, if according to your thing, if internet is so harmful, why are we restricting everything on the internet? Now, the motion specifically states here that we're restricting only online games and alternate social sites because they bring social harms. That is detrimental not only to the individual, but also to others that we have proven to you. Now, having defined the two clashes of today's debate, I'll go on organizing and summarizing how we have proven to you that this is a necessary policy in today's society. Now, number one, we have proven to you why addiction is serious, why addiction actually happens on online games and alternate society sites, social sites. It's physically possible. The reason you're not addicted to soccer is because you simply can't play soccer. It's just practically impossible. But in the case of online games, you can just sit there and click on a simple button and you can go on and on and on. Number two, it's the access is easy. As they have talked to you about the PC industry and whatever, it is very, very cheap. And even though you don't have a PC ROM to go to, you can always do it at home, which makes it much more easier and cheaper. And that is why we believe, due to these reasons, addiction happens. You spend a lot of time, and that's why it happens. Now, the problems of addiction is, number one, it leads to the confusion of reality. Number two, health problems. Now, confusion of reality, as I have told you from the beginning, and health issues are both problematic to the individual, but also to the society as well. Now, you might, we have given to you examples after examples where children have been, random people have been killed, where a baby was left to die while the parents were making a child online. We believe that these are social harms that are detrimental to the society. Now, last but not least, we are proving to you what the role of government is. Especially in the case of Korea, where internet is the most advanced, we believe that the government has the responsibility to take control of a situation where social harms are erupting. Thank you.
Alright, thank the government whip for her speech. Now I'd like to invite the opposition whip.
Since it's grand finals, I wanted to say something special and entertaining, but since I'm not as eloquent as other speakers in this debate, I would rather like to focus on the logical fabric of today's debate. I think our lovely Kang Gi-jung will cover the entertaining part in his reply. Without further ado, I would directly like to move on to the burden of proof that the both sides had in this debate, to recap the fundamental building bricks of both sides' argument, and also the essential reason why this debate was happening from the first place. Firstly, from the government side, Prime Minister spent a whole lot of time on elaborating why addictions occur and why we have to lessen addicts. But this didn't really help their case, because we totally concede to this point of seriousness. Rather, they have to prove why specifically stamina system will be needed to fulfill the purpose. Also, they have to prove that the benefits of their policy will actually outweigh the harms, and only benefit that was posed from the government side was there will be less addiction, but we believe that this benefit is either non-existent or the benefits will not outweigh the harms. So on the other hand, the opposition also recognizes the seriousness of today's problem, but we have a different approach to the problem. We have proven to you, Mr. and Madam Speakers, ladies and gentlemen, that the harms from government's policy will not be ignorable. We can gain more positive effects with our policy without the harms of their moral. No, thank you. Thus, we have more than fulfilled our burden of proof. We automatically win this debate, but I would like to further analyze this matter with the clashes I found in this debate, which are three. First clash was about effectiveness. Which model will serve better the purpose of lessening or curing addiction? Second clash I found was freedom of choice versus the need to regulate, justification issues. Third of all, the third clash will be the impact on society, whether the aftermath will be containable and justifiable, or will it be detrimental. So let me move on to the first clash, which is effectiveness. Yes?
Before you're going on, please talk about how your status quo plan is effective when we see that current problems exist in the status quo.
Their model already exists in the status quo in games such as Babinogi, which has imposed a 2-hour quota, but actually Babinogi has withdrawn its policy because it actually didn't work, and we believe we're going to strengthen the model so it's actually going to work. We say we can always circumvent the control that the government is proposing today by creating multiple IDs and characters. And heavy users who are already seriously addicted to the game are very likely to use these illegal measures even if they have to start over, because they will be able able to transfer the items they have earned to the main ID afterwards. And we didn't really hear an answer from about this problem from the government side. And also they had talked about reality confusion. But we believe that this problem is not going to be solved by their model. People who are addicted show a symptom of getting obsessed with games even when you are not playing games. So making them not play games doesn't necessarily make them go out and have an actual life. Also, they said playing series of different games is irrelevant, but isn't this a likely result of their policy? So they haven't really proven how they're going to decrease confusion, but we're going to focus on reality and approach the real people rather than regulating simple avatars. No, thank you. Also, they have talked about prevention, but we say preemptive measures are not necessary in this case. We can't necessarily regulate something that is not inherently wrong. It's not really comparable to things like suicide because these things are 100% inherently dangerous, but we believe games are not so. Moving on to the second clash, which is freedom of choice versus the need to regulate. We believe that this will pose a discrimination only against the online gaming users. They have flimsy justification. Could the government possibly tell us why no liberal democratic government is currently controlling excess use of alcohol? They didn't really know why, but we do. It's because the level of infringement will be too huge. Also, we said that freedom cannot be regulated unless the act does not pose grave danger to the others. They have talked about the example of killing a baby or things like that, but we believe these are extreme cases. We believe that more murders occur by the effect of alcohol than mere games, but even if we concede to the fact, concede to their point, government is trying to overgeneralize the population and impose a blanket policy, while the problem can be solved by specifically targeting the people who have serious addiction with our policy. And they also said that we had a contradiction, but we do not believe so. They said that freedom of choice was so important, we shouldn't impose our policy as well. But we say this is a matter of level. Their policy covers the whole group who plays online games or out in society, but we're focusing on people who have serious problems, so giving up some part of freedom would be rather acceptable in our world. Also, our policy works on a request basis, which would be the only way to do this. Request from the person himself or a request from the family. Thus, infringement of freedom can be minimized. Moving on to the last clash, which is the impact on society. We haven't really heard an answer of this clash from the government side. We believe that the industry will suffer from the decrease of profit, and this will also impact the international industry. Also, we believe that this policy will go against the current trend of decreasing the black market. We believe that it will have an adverse effect of regulating economic shadows of game industry. DPM has also mentioned about cash trading, which sounded like cash trading, but which was not. They asked how our model was going to solve this problem, but we don't really need to, we don't really have the obligation to solve the problem of black market. Their model is going to increase the black market, whereas we're not really going to increase the black market. So on this point, we believe that we have an upper hand. So on these three clashes, first of all, effectiveness. Our model is definitely more effective. Second of all, freedom of choice versus the need to regulate. We believe their model is not justified. Lastly, the impact on society. We have heard no answer from the government side on this clash. So we have an upper hand on all of the three clashes. So we are proud to oppose.
All right, thank you, Opposition Whip. Now I'd like to invite the reply speaker from the opposition side.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, my lead speaker told you that I would take care of entertaining, but I think I've done enough of that in my Deputy Prime Minister's speech, and I know that my image as a good debater is quasi-inexistent, but I would like to try my best in my reply speech to try to boost that image, or at least create it. Now, so today, in my reply speech, I would like to identify the problem, then ask and base the two models where they actually solve the problem, and then talk about the additional benefits that could be derived. Now, first of all, the main problem, something that both teams conceded, was there is heavy addicted people and that we have to cure them. Now, the thing is, there are three levels of problems. First is that they have a mental illness. They have reality confusion. Secondly, they spend too much time online or related to or thinking about online games. And third, there is a social harm. So let's try to use the models that both teams came up with and actually take a look if this solves the problem. So let's start with a government case. Well, their system was basically a stamina system. So does it solve problem number one, confusion of reality? It doesn't really solve the confusion of reality because that confusion of reality just suddenly doesn't stop when you turn that computer game off. As I have mentioned, according to people I know, well, they keep thinking of the game. They replay it in their mind. It doesn't mean that since you're not playing the game physically, doesn't mean that your mind thinks about it and has a mental confusion. So, moving on to problem number two, spending too much time online games. Well, Mr. Speaker, well, I've already mentioned that we can make multiple IDs, and also through the POI, I think everyone practically knows that leveling up isn't much of a burden, especially to the mentally addicted people who just love to play that game, who are just wanting to play that game. So number three, about social harm. Well, stamina system doesn't really promote a physically healthy society. Mr. Speaker, if you tell people who are addicted to computer games and just shut their computer off and just tell them to, does that automatically mean that these people will just suddenly say, oh, I want to play soccer, oh, I want to meet people outside? No, there are people who just stay at home. Why? Because they're, number one, they have a mental illness, so there's a confusion of the reality. So they are who they are, they don't know who they are. So they have a difficulty encountering new people who tell them, you're not Mr. Prince, you're like this poor KU student. Anyway. Anyways, so it doesn't really help. It doesn't make the society a healthier one. Now let's move on to the model that our side suggested from the opposition side. We said that we would provide mental counseling, and let's try to identify if this works with the problem. Well, number one, mental illness. Of course, how would you solve mental illness except for, I don't know, counseling? It is practically the best way to solve mental illness. You consult people, make sure that their mental status is overcome, and they become normal citizens as well. So not only are we just going to passively shut down their computers from a faraway place, we will engage them, we will confront them, tell them what they're doing is not what they're supposed to do. Number two, too much time on it. Well, Mr. Speaker, if you're not addicted anymore to the online game, why would you spend time on it? Mr. Speaker, by counseling and overcoming the addiction, well, not only will you decrease the time you play on online games, you can actually eliminate playing time on online games. And then third of all, the social harms. Well, the social harm is that people do not go outside, basically what came from the government side. Well, if you solve this mental illness, if you do not have any more that problem between who am I Prince or someone else, well, you will be able to engage with other people even though they think that, well, you're not the Prince Charming. Well, we say that it will facilitate people to actually go outside, enjoy the weather, especially at a lovely day like today. Now, moving on to the benefit that the opposition additionally has provided, something that the proposition actually conceded. There is no economic sacrifice. The game industry will not have to suffer dramatically. Also, there will be no problem related to the cash trading or the black market cash trading, something that the proposition didn't even bother to deal with. So, Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, not only do we solve the problem, but we also provide additional benefits. So, leave the characters alone and target the users. We oppose.
Alright, thank you, opposition reply. Now I would like to invite the government reply speaker to conclude the grand final.
The grand finals, where Ki Jong-oppa will be forever remembered as the guy who watches porn 24/7. Grand finals, thank God, both teams were able to engage on an issue quite severely. You said so. What has this debate evolved to? Basically identifying a problem in the status quo and then providing you the mechanisms of how the government can deal with it. Now, the problem was quite simple. People are simply addicted for various reasons both sides agree upon. It's quite serious in that there's detriments to other people as well, as innocent babies dying due to their parents' negligence. About innocent civilians being dead because of these young teenagers who were excited by online games. Both sides acknowledge this. Both sides differ on how we tackle the problem. The opposition would have you believe that the status quo, counseling, will somehow solve the problem of addiction. Number one, we don't think counseling is bad. We think counseling probably works, but it's already being done. And number two, what we want to do is go further. Rather than taking care of the already addicted, we want to take care of the potential addicts by restricting access once you have reached a certain time quota. Clearly from the very beginning, from my own speech, which you probably forgot by now, we've told you how time equals addiction. The longer you play, the addicted you get. And that is why a time quota, which restricts your access, is effective in this case. Now the opposition, with their very knowledge on games like Yobi, Jogi, or something like that, tell us that we're also promoting the status quo. The very fact is, we're making it compulsory for all these sites that they access to, for all the sites that exist out there. That simply put, it is a strong method, a strong policy by the government, which is effective on a very cheap cost to stop people from accessing it. Furthermore, their plan, again, falls under the assumption that all addicts will be somehow rejuvenated. Like, I'm an addict, let's go. I'm a game addict and my name is Haewon, welcome. Things like that. But the fact is, addicts don't really admit the fact that they're addicts. And furthermore, for their mechanism to work, addicts need to get their butt into the facility in the first place. And by the way, even if you're in the facility, you still have access to these games. So again, the status quo, that was the mechanism of the opposition. On the other hand, the government has been providing you, how a government should and is able to intervene when there is a public harm. Not only is there a health harm in that people are getting heart attacks through dehydration and fatigue, but there's also a mental disease or mental decapability in that people confuse the reality with the future. That people do horrendous things because of prolonged access to games and alternate society sites. So ultimately what we're saying is time equals addiction, as all three speakers have provided to you, that indeed stopping this access is what's effective and what should be promoted by the government side. So at the end of the day, you have this Snudo world, where addicts like to Princess Diary, like our dear whip speaker over there. Addicts like Jonghyun and you like shooting guns online, things like that. We have in the Snudo world, we don't care. We're only going to take care of them when they become addicts. We're only going to deal with these population. But what the government wants to do in the KU world, wants to deal with the potential victims as well. We want to stop our pretty Irmunde from having prolonged access. We want to protect them so they don't become like Ki Jong-oppa. Watching pornography because he can have access for some reason. So ultimately, the government said that there is a necessity for intervention. There is a mechanism. Let's stop access. Let's make it compulsory. Let's have a time quota. And let's prevent not only the potential ones, but the ones who are heavily damaged as is. So ultimately, what you need to ask yourself is, does government have place in taking care of a social harm conducted by a certain industry? We say on the government, absolutely. We came here 5-0 as the first seed and we're leading as champions, KU2.
Alright, that concludes the grand finals. I would like to ask the speakers to cross the floor and shake hands. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to ask you to please stay here until the judges go out to the cafeteria and make a decision. We will start the awarding ceremony straight away.